Lagos, Nigeria. While the wealthy flaunt lavish feasts, Amarachi, a single mother, roams the streets begging for food, receiving only insults in return. At home, her 8-year-old son, Chiemeka, waits hungry, unsure if there will be anything to eat that night. On the brink of dignity, she faces the mansion of the city's most feared man, Chike Obi, a cold and ruthless millionaire. What seemed like a desperate intrusion would become the beginning of a story capable of shaking even hearts of stone. The streets of Lagos buzzed with the noise of cars, vendors shouting fruit prices, and the smell of burnt oil from food stalls. Amid this urban chaos, Amarachi Okafor walked slowly, her body bent more by the weight of worry than physical exhaustion. The scorching sun reflected off the asphalt, burning her already sunburned skin from hours under its rays. Her eyes carried a plea that her voice could no longer contain. "Do you have anything to share?" But each request met only bitter responses, closed doors, impatient gestures, and words that cut like blades. "Go get a job, woman," grumbled a man behind a fruit stall, not even bothering to look at her. A well-dressed woman in colorful attire glanced her up and down, whispering something to her friend who laughed mockingly. The pain wasn't just hunger, it was the feeling of invisibility, of being treated as if her misery was an offense to others' normalcy. Yet, Amarachi pressed on because giving up was not an option. In an alley near the market, barefoot children played, their faces lit up by the simple food they held, bean cakes, rice wrapped in banana leaves. The sight pierced Amarachi with both pain and memory. In another time, when she still had a husband, Chiemeka Okafor Chime ran happily too, his mouth stained with fish soup made in a large pot. Now the 8-year-old boy waited at home alone, staring at an empty pot, trying to trick his stomach with sips of water. Their home was a single room of poorly plastered bricks on the outskirts, with no ceiling and a cracked cement floor. A small space, but one Chiemeka turned into a castle with his vivid childhood imagination. He loved drawing cars on scraps of old paper, dreaming of driving one someday. That afternoon, however, not even his drawings could distract from the anxiety. Every noise from the street sent him running to the window, hoping it was his mother bringing something to eat. But the street remained empty, and the pot stayed smokeless. His stomach ached with cramps, and to fend off hunger, the boy pressed a makeshift ball made of plastic bags against his belly. He kicked it around the room, as if training for a future of football glory. This was a common tactic among children in Nigeria's poor neighborhoods, turning trash into toys. For many, it was just fun. For Chiemeka, it was also a distraction from reality. Still, there were moments when his body weakened, and he curled up in the corner of the bed, whispering his mother's name as if it could summon food. Meanwhile, on the streets, Amarachi battled her own dignity. She tried explaining to passers-by that she only needed a bit of rice or flour, but her words sounded like a nuisance. A young taxi driver laughed loudly. "You people always make up stories about starving kids. Why don't you stop having children if you can't support them?" The words hit her like a hammer. Once again, guilt tried to take root in her heart. Had giving life to Chiemeka been a mistake? But one thought of his bright eyes was enough to pull her together. He was the reason for every step she took, even under insults. Hunger wasn't just the absence of food, it was the absence of compassion. Amarachi noticed how the city seemed immune to others' misery. Lagos, with its modern buildings and imported cars, contrasted with children sleeping on sidewalks, mothers selling anything for a loaf of bread, men begging for non-existent jobs. This disparity reminded her daily of two worlds, one where food was thrown away, and another where every grain was fought over like gold. As the day wore on and her strength waned, her thoughts turned to home. She knew Chiemeka wasn't smiling anymore, that he waited with anxious eyes, trusting his mother would always find a solution. It was a trust that sustained her but also crushed her. What if she returned empty-handed again? Her son's empty stomach was a wound that wouldn't heal. Her heart erased, not just from exhaustion, but because she felt she had no options left. It was as if a voice inside screamed that she had reached her limit. She found a corner to lean against, resting on a sidewalk across from a grand mansion, and took a deep breath. Her eyes traced the imposing iron gates, the illuminated facade, the tall windows. She remembered that place well. She had knocked on that door once before, and the housekeeper, Ngozi Nwosu, had driven her away with cruel words. People like, "You shouldn't even touch this gate." Since then, she swore never to return, but fate seemed to mock her promise. At that moment, she saw a maid, Ifunanya Okeke, tossing garbage bags containing scraps of bread, rice, and even good meat. The smell of discarded food hit her like a punch to the stomach. She considered approaching, asking discreetly, but the memory of past humiliation held her back. Her heart pounded, her hands trembled. The question that wouldn't leave her mind was simple. How far must a mother go to save her child from hunger? The answer would come with a choice that would change everything. That imposing gate no longer seemed just a barrier, but also a last chance. And as she watched the rich garbage others discarded, Amarachi realized she had to decide whether to keep begging for dignity or risk everything for her love for Chiameka. It was the beginning of a step that would lead her into the world of the city's most feared man, Chike Obi. In African Village Story, every video is more than entertainment. It's a journey of emotion, faith, and transformation. Join this community, subscribe now, and ring the bell to walk with us in every new story. The mansion's gate seemed taller that night. Amarachi Okafor knew that one knock could repeat the humiliation she'd already endured, but Chiameka's hunger spoke louder. She decided she wouldn't beg. She couldn't bear more insults. If the world didn't see her when she asked, maybe she'd have to enter unseen. Each step toward that gate was like crossing an invisible border between dignity and survival, a risk that could cost everything. The iron gates creaked open, allowing a luxury car to glide in under the streetlights. Amarachi's heart raced. The plan was simple. Slip in unnoticed, take something edible, leave quickly, and return home. But fate had another plot in store. As she stepped into the silent garden, headlights caught her. She froze, like cornered prey with nowhere to run. The car door opened, with authority. The sound of shoes hitting the ground echoed like a verdict. It was Chike Obi, the mansion's owner. The entire city knew who he was, a ruthless millionaire, known as much for his wealth as for his coldness. Rumors said he not only despised the poor but took pride in it. The look he cast at Amarachi confirmed every story she'd heard. His deep voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing here, you rat? Trying to steal from me?" The words lashed like a whip. Rat. It wasn't just an insult. It was a denial of her humanity, turning a mother into something filthy, unworthy of compassion. Tears welled in her eyes before she could respond. Her body trembled, but her voice, though shaky, tried to hold on to the truth. "Please, sir, I didn't come for money or gold or anything that belongs to you. I only saw the maid throw away food, good food, that to me and my son would be a treasure. He's only 8 years old." The silence that followed felt endless. For a moment, Chike Obi's gaze drifted to some distant memory. His hardened expression faltered, as if an old wound had been touched. Perhaps memories of his own childhood, perhaps of a hunger that once visited him. But the vulnerability lasted seconds. He quickly donned the mask of coldness the world knew well. His approach was slow, almost calculated. His impeccable suit contrasted with Amarachi's simple, worn clothes. A social chasm materialized before her eyes, but there was no room to retreat. With each step he took, her breath grew shorter. The fear wasn't just of what he might do to her, but of the possibility of never seeing her son again. The night carried a cruel irony. Inside, well-kept gardens, security cameras, luxury in every detail. Outside, entire neighborhoods fought over market scraps. That was Lagos, a city offering both brilliance and shadow. And now, that shadow had a face and a name. Chike Obi. She fell to her knees, crying, heedless of the dust staining her clothes further. Her voice trembled, but carried desperation. "For the love of God, don't turn me over to the police. My son only has me. He's at home waiting." There was something stronger than fear in her words, the raw truth of a mother begging for survival. And that truth echoed not just in the mansion's garden, but in the conscience of the man facing her. It was as if a buried past had been forcibly unearthed. For a moment, Chike looked away, as if refusing to feel. But her tearful eyes, her repeated plea, the image of a hungry boy who never knew his father, these images insisted on etching themselves into his mind. The dilemma hung in the air. He faced two choices: use his power to crush this woman further, or yield to a voice he'd nearly forgotten, one that once begged for help. The answer would come, but not immediately. First, he needed to reassert his authority, to show he remained the man of stone everyone feared. With a mix of memory and hardness, he concluded in a cutting tone, "Where do you live? Where is this son you keep mentioning?" Tears streamed down Amarachi's face, but her voice found strength to answer. "He's at home, sir. Alone, waiting for me." The tension in that garden wasn't just between master and intruder. It was a clash of two worlds. On one side, raw hunger, on the other, armored coldness. And amid this clash, something invisible began to take root, a spark that time would reveal as either destruction or redemption. In that moment, the millionaire had the power to destroy or offer a chance. Do you think Amarachi deserved compassion for what she did? Or should she have been punished for breaking into the mansion? Share your opinion. I'd love to know how you see this scene. The silence in the garden felt heavier than the air itself. Chikeobi's stern gaze rested on the hunched figure of Amarachi Okafor, tears still fresh on her face. For a moment, no one breathed until the millionaire's deep voice sliced through the night like a verdict. "Endrick, go to her house. Find out if this son exists. If she's lying, she'll go to prison and never see daylight again." The words rang like a hammer striking iron. Amarachi felt her body collapse inwardly, not from the threat of prison, but from the possibility that no one would believe her truth. She stood before men who could decide her fate as casually as they priced goods in the market, yet there was no escape. All she had left was the hope that Chiemeka's existence would be her only defense. As Endrick, the driver, set off, Cheek issued a curt order to a guard: "Give this hungry woman something." A piece of stale bread was placed in Amarachi's trembling hands. What might seem insignificant to others became a feast for someone who had endured days of insults and an empty stomach. She bit into it eagerly, tears in her eyes, chewing as if each bite brought life back to her body. The scene was uncomfortable. Watching someone devour bread as if it were the last on earth exposed a reality no amount of luxury could hide. Those who watched didn't just see hunger, they saw survival. This simple act of eating revealed something about Lagos's streets. It wasn't uncommon to see children fighting over rice scraps in markets, or mothers trading a used scarf for a plate of eBay cassava paste. The bread in Amarachi's hand wasn't just food, it was a symbol of a country where abundance and misery lived side by side, separated only by high walls. And now, within those walls, hunger had invaded in the form of a woman on her knees. Minutes dragged like hours. Her heart raced and the silence heightened the tension. Each bite of bread was watched by suspicious eyes of whispering servants. Some snickered quietly, others merely looked on with disdain. To them, Amarachi's presence in that space was an affront, but for her it was a last chance. Suddenly, the sound of an approaching engine announced Endrick's return. The car passed through the gate, its headlights illuminating the garden once more. The door opened, and in the driver's arms was Chiemeka Okafor Chaime, small and fragile, his eyes wide with fear of the night. With each step bringing him closer to his mother, her breath grew shorter. Was it really her son? Was everything all right? ¿O estaría el millonario usar esto como excusa para castigarla aún más? The moment of reunion broke all barriers. As soon as she saw the boy, Amarachi ran toward him. Her arms wrapped around his fragile body, and tears streamed down both their faces. No words could capture the relief of seeing her son safe. The tight embrace, the desperate sobs, the warmth of being together again, it all spoke louder than any explanation. But the scene didn't end there. Chiemeka, his face still wet with tears, turned to the man in the suit, watching with an enigmatic expression. He approached with timid steps, his childish voice cutting through the heavy silence. "Please, sir, don't arrest my mum. She didn't do anything wrong." The plea struck like lightning in the hearts of those listening. The tone of a hungry child's plea carried a force no fortune could buy. It was one thing to hear it from an adult woman, used to being judged, but from a child, innocent, desperate, yet courageous, it made even the hardest hearts tremble. In that moment, Amarachi, still holding part of the bread she'd saved, offered it to her son. "Here, Chime, I know you're hungry." He took it as if it were the greatest gift in the world, biting quickly, without ceremony. The simple, painful scene made everyone present hold their breath. A piece of bread became a silent witness to a love that defied misery. And on Chika Obi's face, though he tried to maintain his coldness, something seemed to shift. The dilemma grew clearer. What kind of man would he choose to be before this mother and son? The ruthless executioner Lagos knew, or someone willing to hear the cry of misery knocking at his door? The answer remained silent, but everyone there knew that. After that night, nothing would be the same. The silence still hung heavy when Chike Obi took a deep breath and stepped toward Amarachi Okafor. His eyes remained stern, but his voice carried firm authority. "You're not going to prison, but you won't go unpunished. You'll work for me until you pay for what you tried to steal. You and your son will have a room here. He won't be left on the streets like a vagrant anymore. I'll put the boy in school, pay for his supplies, and ensure he studies. You'll rise early every day and work hard because nothing comes free." The words sounded like a sentence, each phrase heavy as a hammer striking iron. To those listening, it was punishment disguised as opportunity. But beneath the stern tone, something more hid. A decision not to destroy this woman but to give her a path. "Consider this a debt," he continued, his tone unwavering. "You owe me for the audacity of breaking into my home. You'll pay with work, but in return, you won't sleep on the streets anymore. You'll have a roof, food, and your son will have a future." The housekeeper, Ngozi Nwosu, widened her eyes, unable to believe what she heard. The punishment seemed more like an act of care, something that didn't align with the man she knew. Still, the order was given, and no one dared question it. Amarachi's heart raced. Each word had been harsh, but beneath the hardness was an undeniable detail. For the first time in a long while, someone spoke of Chiameka's future, as if it had value. The sentence that could have sounded like condemnation silently became salvation. That night, as they entered the hastily prepared room with 2 simple beds, mother and son experienced something that seemed unattainable hours earlier, the peace of sleeping with dignity. And though the millionaire called it a debt, a mother's heart knew that deep down, it was more than punishment. It was the firm hand of someone who, without admitting it, had chosen to help. Chaik said it was all a debt, but he gave a roof, food, and school. Do you believe that behind the toughness, a heart was already changing? Share your thoughts. Let's reflect together. The morning sun spread through the mansion's garden, illuminating well-tended flowers and reflecting off the dew-covered lawn. In a corner, a small figure moved with almost adult-like focus. Chiameka, with a watering can larger than his frail arms, poured water slowly over the plants, as if it were the most important task in the bee world. Each leaf that fell to the ground he picked up, stacking them neatly. To many it might seem like a child's distraction, but for Chiameka, it was a way to give thanks for the roof and bed he'd received. At just 8 years old, he already carried the awareness of someone who had endured more pain than he should. In that garden, he didn't want to play, he wanted to give back. And perhaps, without realizing it, he sought to earn the respect of the man everyone feared. The sound of firm steps on the gravel startled him. The watering can nearly slipped from his hands, but he quickly composed himself. His gaze lifted and met the imposing figure of Chike Obi, pristine in his impeccable suit, shoulders squared, and the usual stern expression. The boy's heart raced, but he held his posture as if unwilling to seem disrespectful. The deep voice broke the silence. "I hired only your mother. I want to see you studying, not out here playing gardener." The reprimand sounded like thunder, but Chiameka didn't look away. He took a deep breath, mustering all the courage his small body could hold, and replied humbly, "I just wanted to help, sir. I heard one of the maids say you're a demon, but to me you seem more like an angel, a bit angry, but one who does kindness." The entire garden seemed to freeze. Even the light breeze rustling the trees paused for a moment. Chike Obi, accustomed to hearing false flattery from sycophantic adults and hidden insults from enemies, had never heard something so naive, so raw, and yet so piercing. For the first time in a long while, the mask of coldness slipped, and from his lips escaped something rare, a genuine laugh. The laughter surprised even the guards watching from afar. It wasn't mocking or sarcastic, but pure, almost childlike. The millionaire the city knew as the executioner showed a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. An 8-year-old boy had done what no one ever dared, reminded him that he could still smile. Chiameka didn't realize the impact of his words. He simply went back to collecting dry leaves as if nothing had happened, but Chiki's eyes followed him, intrigued. That boy saw kindness where the world saw only hardness, and for a man who had spent years nurturing grudges, it was like looking into a mirror that reflected a forgotten version of himself. In Lagos, there's a popular saying, "A child's mouth speaks truths adults are too afraid to say." Perhaps that was it. Perhaps it was the innocent gaze of someone who didn't know contracts, betrayals, or the wounds that shaped the millionaire's coldness. But the fact was, that morning, It wasn't Chikiobi's wealth that dominated the garden, but the simplicity of a boy who dared call him an angel, even if an angry one. As he walked away, Chike masked the change in his expression, trying to reclaim the stern posture he always carried. But something had already shifted within him. That small gesture, those unexpected words, had opened a crack he didn't know how to close, and the question lingered. What else could this boy awaken in a heart so used to ice? The morning moved calmly in the mansion. Sunlight poured generously through the tall windows, reflecting off the marble floor like a mirror. Servants hurried with their tasks, and the air was thick with the scent of freshly washed laundry. In a corner of the spacious living room, Chiemeka let himself be carried by a rare joy. He sat on the rug, pushing his new toy cars. The boy made engine noises with his mouth, creating imaginary races and laughing alone, as if in a real championship. The soft rug became a racetrack, each invented curve more thrilling than the last. For the first time in a long while, his childhood had room to exist without the shadow of hunger. But the innocence didn't last long. Adana Ease, a sharp-tongued employee, entered the room carrying a tray. Spotting the boy spreading toys across the pristine floor, she immediately furrowed her brow. She marched toward him with heavy steps, hands on hips, and let her irritation spill into her voice. "What do you think you're doing here? This isn't a place for playing. You'll dirty the master's rug with your mess." Chiemeka stopped, not understanding the weight of her words. He clutched the cars to his chest as if protecting them would also protect his happiness. With an innocent gaze, he tried to explain, "I was just playing, ma'am." The response didn't calm her. It only fueled her envy. Her face leaned closer to the boy, and her words dripped with contempt, as if meant to crush any dignity he had left. "You're nothing but an intruder, just the son of a thieving maid. Remember that before you think you belong here." The words cut like knives. Chiemeka's face burned, his eyes filled with tears, and his small hand let a car slip, rolling until it hit the table leg. What had been play turned into stifled silence. His childhood was stolen in seconds, by words heavier than stones. The tears, timid at first, became unavoidable. Sobs filled the room, but before despair could take over, an unexpected presence appeared. A deep voice echoed through the walls. "Repeat what you said." Chika Obi was there. He had just entered, drawn by the sounds escaping the room. His cold gaze wasn't on the boy, but on the employee who dared humiliate a child. Silence fell instantly. Nearby servants stopped, trying to grasp if the master had truly heard. Adana swallowed hard, attempting to compose herself. Sir, I just..." She didn't get to finish. "Shut up," Cheek's voice cut like steel. "You're fired. Pack your things and leave my house now." No one dared move a muscle. The weight of the order was absolute. The stunned employee let the tray tremble in her hands before lowering her head and hurrying out, avoiding the master's piercing gaze. Meanwhile, Chiemeka remained seated on the floor, his eyes still teary. Then the man approached, kneeling to the boy's level. The contrast was striking. The millionaire in an expensive suit, now on his knees on the rug, holding the boy everyone called an intruder. "Don't believe anything she said. You are special." His firm voice now carried an unexpected warmth. The crying subsided slowly, replaced by the relief of hearing his existence had value. For the boy, it wasn't just comfort. It was redemption. And for the servants watching from afar, the scene was almost unbelievable. The man known for his harshness now knelt before a poor child, defending him with words few imagined he could say. In that moment, it wasn't the executioner of the poor at the center of the room, but a man who, for an instant, let the ice melt. And the question lingering in the air was inevitable. How far would this change go? If the humiliation Chiemeka faced touched you deeply, leave a heart in the comments to show no child deserves to go through that. The night was quiet in the mansion. Most servants had retired, and only the distant chirping of crickets filled the corridors. In the office, Chikiobi sat behind his imposing wooden desk, surrounded by papers, contracts, and reports. It was late, but for him, work was always a refuge, a way to avoid the ghosts that emerged when the lights dimmed. In that quiet, a timid knock came at the door. Amarachi Okafor held a tray tightly. On it, a simple family recipe cake and a steaming mug of hot chocolate. Her hands trembled slightly, not just from the weight, but from the risk of being seen as intrusive. She took a deep breath before opening the door, courage fueled by the desire to thank. Sometimes gratitude speaks louder than fear. As she entered, the millionaire looked up from his document. His voice came out dry, as always. "I didn't ask for anything." She swallowed hard but responded with respectful firmness. "I know, sir, but I needed to thank you. Since you gave me work here, I haven't found the moment. And yesterday, after defending my son, I couldn't let it pass. I brought something I made with my own hands." The words hung in the air. For the first time, Chica didn't know how to react immediately. Her natural acknowledgement of his gesture, even from someone so harsh, seemed to break the unspoken rules of that house. But after a moment of silence, he gave a discreet nod, allowing her to serve. Amarachi approached the desk and set the tray down carefully. The sweet smell of the homemade cake mingled with the strong scent of the office's wood. Steam from the hot chocolate rose slowly, filling the room with unexpected warmth. With steady hands, she cut a piece of cake and placed it before him, saying nothing more. Sometimes, silence is the sincerest thanks. Cheek picked up the fork almost warily. He took the first bite, and as the flavor spread, something within him broke. The taste was simple, nothing like the delicacies served at lavish banquets, but it carried something far more powerful: memory. Suddenly, he wasn't in the office anymore. He was back in the small room of his childhood in a poor home, where his mother made that same cake with leftover flour to cheer her children on tough days. The memory hit like a blow. He saw his mother's face, sweaty from work but smiling, as she offered a piece of cake as if it were a royal feast. He recalled the smell of burning firewood, her fragile laugh, the feeling that, despite poverty, there was still love. His stomach tightened, not from hunger but from longing and the pain of buried memories he swore never to revisit. The fork paused in the air. His eyes drifted to some distant point on the wall, as if trying to hide from the emotions insisting on surfacing. The hardness that defined him began to crack, and inside he wondered, how much of himself had he lost by choosing to be only the cold man the world saw? The simple cake brought forth a piece of the past that still burned quietly. Across the desk, Amarachi watched in silence. She didn't dare speak, but noticed the impact. His gaze was no longer that of an arrogant millionaire, but of a man in conflict, wrestling with memories he didn't want to feel. She understood that, unknowingly, she had reached a part of his soul no one else dared touch. And in that office, amid papers and memories, a simple gesture revealed something powerful. Sometimes it's not luxury that wounds, but the memory of what's been lost. The question that echoed was inevitable. Was Chike Obi ready to let the past make room for a different future? Sometimes it's not luxury that leaves a mark, but the simple memories we carry from childhood. Do you have a taste or smell that brings back strong memories? Share in the comments. Many will relate. The mansion's corridors had gained a new sound: stifled laughter, Chiemeka's light steps, the lingering scent of cake in the air. Fungozi Nwosu, each sign of affection was an alarm. For years, the housekeeper had been the silent law of the house. Now, Amarachi Okafor and her son were shifting the tectonic plates of domestic power, and when power trembles, the first reaction is often attack. Something needed to put things back in place, no matter the cost. In the office, on a glass shelf, rested Chike Obi's watch collection. They weren't just expensive objects. Each piece held stories, memories of deals closed, gifts from old clients, family keepsakes. In Lagos, many get their watches fixed at street stalls. Here, those timepieces were treated almost like relics. For a scheming mind, the perfect target had a name and a tick-tock. Ngozi waited for her chance. A morning of inspections, the master away at a meeting, the staff scattered between laundry and kitchen, thin gloves, calculated steps, eyes scanning for cameras and corners. Her hand reached the shelf as if it belonged there. A single watch was taken, the one of sentimental value, the one Chike sometimes held for long seconds, as if conversing with a past no one could hear. A cold, calculated theft. The next move required precision. Among Amarachi's freshly ironed clothes at the bottom of a neatly folded pile, the metal was hidden, not tossed carelessly, planted like a poisonous seed that would later bloom into a damning discovery. In grand houses, intrigues often sprout in the cracks. A drawer left ajar, an object out of place, a whisper timed perfectly. Here, the seed was sown. Then came the performance. Ngozi entered Chike's office, announcing with a mix of feigned concern and shock, "A watch is missing." The statement rang like a siren through the corridors. Servants were summoned, eyes scoured shelves, cushions, baseboards. The housekeeper orchestrated the search like a choir conductor, each gesture deliberate, each order meant to reach the right ears. A hunt took over the house, and when a house hunts, it always finds culprits. The laundry room was Act 2. In front of 2 assistants, Ngozi called for Amarachi's clothing piles. Gloved hands rummaged through fabric after fabric, and then the strike. The metallic glint appeared where it never should have been. A scandalized gasp, wide eyes, a cutting phrase. I knew it. The find didn't just prove a crime, it validated the narrative of someone desperate to keep her throne. Without pause, the housekeeper grabbed Amarachi by the arm. The walk to the office became a parade of shame. Heads turned, whispers sparked, fingers pointed. At the end of the corridor, Chiameka heard the commotion, dropped a toy car to the floor and ran after, because the courage of the young often ignores decorum. At the office door, a boy's eyes met his mother's, and without words, they both knew a storm had arrived. Ngozi staged the scene with surgical precision. The watch on the desk, hand on hip, rehearsed indignation. "Sir, your prized watch was hidden in this woman's things. We nearly lost another one. I always suspected her." The word thief entered the room like a stone hurled at stained glass. It didn't just shatter the glass, it shattered the silence. Accusation made, reputation at stake, bonds on the verge of breaking. Amarachi's response came like someone defending her very breath. Voice trembling but firm. She hadn't touched the watch, wouldn't take anything that wasn't hers, wouldn't raise her son in a home built on lies. In many Lagos neighborhoods, an accusation of theft clings like fine dust, invisible from afar but suffocating up close. Such an accusation could close doors for years. That was the weight on the desk. Then Chiameka stepped forward, a small shield in an 8-year-old's body. Fists clenched, chin resolute, eyes wet. "My mother is not a thief." The simple phrase, launched like an arrow, pierced the air with the force only innocence carries. The entire office seemed smaller, because a child's courage shrinks even grand rooms. Here the boy didn't just speak for his mother. He spoke for every child who learns too early to defend those they love. Chika Obi listened in silence. His face, a mask hard to read, behind it gears turning. He knew the housekeeper, he knew the woman who brought cake and memories. He knew his own past, where honor and humiliation dueled. He didn't raise his voice or slam the desk. He merely leaned forward slightly, locked eyes with Amarachi, and said in a tone that brooked no reply, "Go to your room and wait for me." A sentence that didn't yet judge, but prepared for judgment. The door closed carefully, and the corridor became just a corridor. Again, inside a heavy silence lingered, weightier than a shout. Outside, a question no one dared voice aloud spread. When truth decides to speak, who does it speak for? The night would bring the answer, and perhaps demand a price for it. "Sir, you're not calling the police?" Ngozi Nwosu asked, confident she deserved praise for her good deed. "Sit down, please," Chiki Obi replied, his voice steady. "Before anything else, you're going to listen to me." The housekeeper obeyed, uncomfortable in the chair across from the heavy desk. The office seemed smaller, as if the shelves and wall clock closed in with each second. Chike clasped his hands, rested his elbows, and spoke slowly, as if weighing every syllable. "There are things of great value in this house. That's why I installed hidden cameras. I haven't checked today's footage yet, but if I do, will I see Amarachi stealing?" Ngozi's face drained of color. A muscle twitched at the corner of her mouth. Chike leaned closer. "Don't you have something to tell me?" The silence sliced the air. The mask of confidence cracked. The pride that had sustained years of control wavered. First a sigh, then a trembling voice. "It was me. I took the watch and hid it in her things. I thought, this woman was taking advantage of your kindness. I thought sooner or later she'd betray you. I did it to protect you." Cheek didn't celebrate the confession. There was no victory in crushing someone, only the duty to restore what a lie had tried to break. He leaned back, took a deep breath, and spoke with a calm that felt like polished steel. "I was once as poor as they are. I watched my mother work in people's homes, swallowing humiliations to support me. I studied, grew, fought, and built the empire I have today. Along the way, I met people like you. They thought they were better than me, stepped on me, said I'd never amount to anything." The words weren't angry. They were sharp. Ngozi lowered her eyes, her hands clasped as if holding a glass about to fall. "What you did today was grave," he continued. "You could have ruined an innocent mother's life. She could have been unjustly imprisoned and separated from her son. Please forgive me, sir. I didn't think about that. I'm not a bad person." Her voice broke, and for a moment, the stern boss seemed just a frightened woman facing her own mistake. "I know you're not bad," he replied, unrelenting in substance. "But from now on, you're not staying in this house. Trust is the foundation of this mansion, and it's cracked. I'll recommend you to a friend with the best references for your years of dedication and work. You'll have a chance to start over. But here, the door closes today." Ngozi raised her eyes, surprised by a sentence that blended correction with an honorable exit. Cheek's compassion, however, came with boundaries. It didn't erase the consequence, only prevented the mistake from becoming total ruin. "Let this be a lesson," he concluded. "You may pack your things." She nodded, swallowing tears that insisted on coming. She stood slowly, took 2 steps, paused at the doorknob as if searching for a final defense, and found none. She opened the door in silence. Outside, the corridor waited, long as a journey. Inside, Cheeky sat still for a moment, hearing only his heart remind him that justice without truth is violence, and truth without mercy is stone. The night outside prepared the next chapter. The mansion's corridor held a thick silence when Chike Obi reached the room at the end of the hall. Inside, 2 open suitcases, clothes hastily folded, a pair of worn shoes by the door. Amarachi Okafor stood tense, shoulders rigid, as if already bidding farewell before hearing the verdict. The doorknob turned, the millionaire entered, and the room's energy seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the first move. "Where do you think you're going?" The question was firm, without unnecessary harshness, just firm. "Are you sending me to prison this time?" Her response cut through her throat like a blade, eyes wet, hands trying not to tremble. The room waited for the reply, as if invisible curtains were about to open for the main act. Chike took 2 steps, stopped by the suitcase, and softened his tone. "I didn't send you to prison the first time when I barely knew who you were. How could I do that now, knowing the weight of your struggle?" The confession hung like a breath after fear, pushing back the tears that threatened to fall. Then came the explanation sought since the uproar. In a controlled voice, he revealed the ruse, the bluff about the cameras. He said that given the gravity, he needed truth without noise. He created the exact pressure and heard Ngozi Nwosu's confession. He added something that changed the night's hue. "Even without footage, I already knew. Your way of caring for the clothes, every precise fold, the scent of simple soap, that speaks of character, not theft." The word trust settled on the bed beside the suitcases, as if it had finally found a place. The powerful man's posture softened. His gaze crossed the past and returned marked. It was time to shed the armor. "I was raised by a single mother," he began without flourish, "a woman who spent years working in people's homes. I heard many cutting things. Don't touch, don't sit. This isn't a place for people like you. Lagos teaches early the difference between an open door and a closed gate." His body stayed upright, but his voice grew rough, like touching an old, still sensitive scar. Memories came in sequence, images smelling of charcoal and rain, queuing for water, a borrowed notebook, the long walk to school, the humiliation of being barred at the gate because his uniform wasn't new. My mother held my hand tightly. She said, "One day this will be a story, not a wound." Each memory carried the dust of the road and the dignity of a mother who never let go of her son's hand. The present returned with clarity. When I saw, "You protect your boy with the little you had," I recognized that same steel. I see in you the strength I saw in her. Back then, we had no one. Now, you have me, he said simply, without theatrics, as if planting a pillar in the middle of the room. The words vibrated on the walls, making the suitcases seem out of place. The impact broke the dam. Amarachi stepped forward and hugged him, first restrained, then fully. There was no calculation in the gesture. There was relief, gratitude, and the recognition of 2 stories finally touching without shame. His arms took a second to respond, unaccustomed to closeness. When they did, his chest found a rest that contracts couldn't offer. The wall clock ticked slower, as if the whole house were listening. "I'm sorry," she whispered between soft sobs. "Fear speaks loudly when life pushes you to the edge." "I understand," he replied unhurriedly. "I spent years hiding where I came from to not seem weak. It's armor that weighs heavy. Sometimes, true strength is dropping it to the ground. The suitcases remained open, but escape no longer made sense, and that contrast lit a new glow in the small room. They stepped back just enough to see each other better. There were no promises, only presence. Something small, stubborn began to grow, respect turning to affection, affection learning the path to love. Outside, the city roared as always. Inside, a hardened heart bloomed quietly, like a flower opening before the sun, and the lingering question, soft and persistent, was just one. What happens when fear takes a step back and courage takes center stage? A hug changed the direction of the suitcases. Have you ever had a moment when someone believed in you when everyone else doubted? Share it in one sentence. Your memory might spark courage in someone reading. The scene seemed impossible. At the heart of a mansion known for its cold corridors, the man dubbed the executioner of the poor was on his knees on the floor, jacket off, pushing toy cars across a soft rug. Beside him, Chiemeka laughed as if he'd just won the world. No contracts, no figures, just plastic wheels spinning and a trail of innocence capable of dismantling any wall. A boy's pure laughter echoed through the room like a hymn of freedom. From a distance, Amarachi watched. Her teary eyes weren't moved by the luxury now surrounding her life, but by the simplicity before her, a chance to start anew. Neither the comfortable room, nor the new clothes, nor the food on the table weighed as much as that moment when the city's most feared man played with her son as if he were his own blood. Gratitude came not for wealth, but for dignity restored. As he guided the red toy car, Chike Obi caught himself smiling genuinely for the first time in years. The smile wasn't for a deal well closed or a profitable investment. It was for a boy who looked at him without fear, without ulterior motives, only with affection. In that moment, he understood something no report could teach. True value lies not in what you possess, but in what you share. Chiemeka's laughter returned a piece of his soul that pride had buried. With a trembling voice, Amarachi approached and said, "Thank you. Not for the roof, not for the food, but for believing there was still a future for us." Her words pierced Chika's heart like a ray of light. For years he'd convinced himself kindness was weakness. That trust opened the door to pain. But there, before that woman and her son, he realized that perhaps it was never strength that drove him, but fear. Fear of being humiliated again, fear of abandonment, fear of being reminded of where he came from. And now, two strangers showed him there was no shame in allowing himself to be human. In the corridors, servants whispered in disbelief. How could the master, the same one who fired employees for a wrong glance, now be on the floor, laughing like a father? The mansion, once a symbol of power and distance, became a witness to a silent, profound change. It was as if the walls, accustomed to coldness, struggled to contain so much warmth. What began as punishment transformed into something far greater. The coexistence, once imposed as penalty, was now a bridge. Each day, the three discovered that the gap between poverty and luxury wasn't insurmountable when the hand of dignity was extended. Amarachi brought care, Chiemeka brought innocence, and Chike rediscovered a tenderness he thought dead. Together, they were weaving an invisible bond no money could buy. And so, within the mansion that had once been a prison for many, the possibility of redemption was born. Not a grand redemption marked by heroes or titles, but a simple one, born on the floor with toy wheels and a child's laughter. The man once called an executioner now found, in the two he'd taken in by force, what he'd always wanted without admitting: family. Some stories aren't about power, but about hearts learning to beat again. Chike Obi didn't just save a mother and her son, they saved him, because when a poor woman's courage meets a child's innocent laughter, even the coldest man can remember what it is to love. And when a family rises from the ashes of pain, the whole world bows to the power of hope. New stories are coming. Click the video below and dive into the next emotion. Until then.